In Venezuela, after election day, held in total calm and normality, the Great Patriotic Pole achieved a majority in the National Assembly, with 82.52% of the votes counted, at the same time that the opposition parties kept close to 32% of the electoral preferences. Worldwide efforts continue to achieve mass vaccinations and curb the spread of COVID-19. This Monday, Ghana's general elections are underway to elect their next president, as well as members of parliament. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. Preliminary results show that the Great Patriotic Pole won Sunday's parliamentary elections in Venezuela with over 67% of votes. With 82.35% of the ballots counted, the National Electoral Council of Venezuela announced on Monday the official results of the elections, where 277 deputies to the National Assembly were elected. The president of the National Electoral Council, Indira Alfonso, reported that with a participation of 31% and an overall of 5,264,104 votes, the governing coalition of the Great Patriotic Pole, Simón Bolívar, obtained 67.6%, or 3,558,320 votes, followed by the opposition Democratic Alliance with 17.95%, translated into 944,665, while the United Venezuelans Alliance obtained 4.19% and the Venezuelan Communist Party reached 2.73%. In Venezuela, after the parliamentary elections on this Sunday, an atmosphere of peace and full tranquility reigns in all the national territory. The revolutionary people celebrated until the early hours of Monday morning in the capital of the country. The results obtained in the legislative votes, where the Great Patriotic Pole achieved victory with more than 67% of the votes. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, described the victory as resounding. The socialist leaders pledged to work to attend the needs to the people. They also pointed out that the extreme right was expelled from the legislative palace through the votes. And this is how the president of the National Election Council of Venezuela, Indira Alfonso, informed about the results of the parliamentary elections of this December the 6th.
With a turnout of 5,264,104 votes, the results are as follows. The Alliance of the Great Patriotic Poles got 3,558,320 votes for 67.6% of votes. The Democratic Alliance, the Committee of Independent Political Organizations, Citizen Movement Let's Change, Progressive Advance and Change got 944,665 for 17.5%. VUPB and VPA 220,502 for 4.19%. The PCB 143,917 for 2.73%, and other parties 357,609 for 6.79%.
The government of Cuba congratulated the Venezuelan government for the electoral process held this Sunday. The letter sent by the island authorities says that Havana, December the 6th, 2020, year 62 of the revolution. Dear Nicholas, on behalf of the Cuban people, the Communist Party, and the government of Cuba, we congratulate the Great Patriotic Pole, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, and the Bolivarian people for the victory in the parliamentary elections. Once again, the homeland of Bolívar and Chávez, under your wise leadership, heightened its democratic and participative spirit in the face of the attacks of imperialism. A fraternal embrace from the signatories Raúl Castro Ruz, first Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba, and Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, the President of the Republic of Cuba. Former President of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, who participated as international observer in the parliamentary elections held in Venezuela, praised the South American election day that were held in the midst of the current pandemic.
I think there are many examples to follow, such as the mechanism of voting that allows it to be done quickly, minimizing the risk of spreading the disease.
In Brazil, citizens of the state of Bahia held demonstrations to demand justice and an end to police violence after the murder of young man Davi Pereira during a military police operation. The residents of São Félix in the south of Bahia protested the murder of David Pereira, a 22-year-old man, during an operation by the military police. Community members carried out roadblocks and set ablaze some establishments in reaction to the police violence of which they have been victims. The social movements have expressed their rejection of the repressive actions of the police under the silent complicity of the government of Jair Bolsonaro and are calling for an immediate end to the abuses by the law enforcement. In Colombia, data provided by the Institute for Peace and Independent Development confirmed the assassination of more than 300 social leaders in the country so far this year. Several studies carried out by the Peace Advocating Institution show that 340 social leaders lost their lives in at least 79 massacres during 2020. The report indicates that the regions most affected by violence are the departments of Cauca and Antioquia. The document includes the two massacres perpetrated during the weekend in both regions. Social organizations and human rights defenders support the call to the Colombian government to address this scourge that plagues the campesino and indigenous communities. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Worldwide efforts continue to achieve mass vaccinations and curb the spread of COVID-19. Russia's Sputnik V vaccine is being transported across the country's regions after the start of a mass vaccination effort in Moscow this weekend. On Monday, military personnel in Russia's Far East region of Zabaykalsky Krai were given the vaccine. Meanwhile, 1,000 doses of the vaccine were transported to a warehouse in the Shelbansky region, from which they will be distributed to be administered to medical workers and teachers. The vaccine requires storage and refrigerated areas of -18 degrees Celsius and will be transported in refrigerated minivans. Another 2,000 doses of the vaccine are expected in the Shelbansky region by the end of the year and will be given to doctors, teachers, police officers, and social workers. While other countries gear up for rapid rollouts of COVID-19 vaccines, Switzerland is taking out a slower path, pricing caution over speed, according to a leading vaccine expert. Britain and Russia will both begin mass vaccination this week, while the US and European regulators are expected to provide emergency approval for 2 vaccines very shortly, with millions of doses set to be given by the end of this year. But in Switzerland, authorities are in no hurry to approve a vaccine. The first few doses not expected to arrive before late January and larger volumes several months after. Switzerland, a country of some 8.6 million people, has counted 5,000 deaths from the pandemic and seems to be slowly getting a second wave of infections under control.
For me today, discussion is justified because in Switzerland we're not in the catastrophic situation of the United States. We have the same virus everywhere, but we have managed to limit it with really heavy measures, with measures that are restrictive for individual life, restrictive for the economy, but we are not totally overwhelmed to the point of other countries at the present time.
And Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon on Monday visited an Edinburgh hospital ahead of the largest immunisation programme in British history. In Scotland, the first COVID-19 vaccinations are due to be administered on Tuesday.
A really significant moment, and I think after a pretty rough and miserable year for everybody, it's an optimistic moment. I've just been in visiting at the clinic where vaccinations will happen this week, speaking to those who'll be carrying out the vaccinations but also being vaccinated. So it really is one of these moments where for the first time in a long time we can see some real light at the end of the tunnel. It's a massive logistical exercise, lots of people working really hard, but a moment to be optimistic.
In Germany, a testing center in the city of West Baden prepares for mass vaccinations once the shots are made available by the federal government. For those citizens invited for treatment, the route through the vaccination center will be initially involve a temperature scan. Chancellor Angela Merkel's chief of staff said she expects coronavirus vaccinations to start in Germany in the very first days of the new year. Infection figures in Germany have stabilized at high levels since a partial lockdown started on November the 2nd, but have not decreased. On Monday, the National Disease Control Center reported more than 12,000 new cases of the past 24 hours.
A logistically difficult task for us would be to use different vaccinations in the center, because everybody has to be vaccinated twice to get the full protection, and that would be a complication if you needed to use 3 vaccines in one center.
On Monday, China condemned the Trump administration for ending 5 cultural exchange programs with China, worsening the already troubled relationship between the two nations.
China strongly opposes and condemns the vicious attack by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to China's political system and the further restrictions on cultural exchange between China and the U.S. Some anti-China forces in the U.S. cling on to the Cold War mentality in an attempt to provoke ideological confrontation and undermine China-U.S. relations. Such a practice purely violates the fundamental interests of two peoples and goes against the trend of the times, which will surely end up with nothing. China will take necessary measures to safeguard its sovereignty, safety and development interests.
Hong Kong residents can now get COVID-19 tests from vending machines put in place by the local government in several metro stations. The tests are free of charge and accessible by scanning a Hong Kong's transport card. Those using the kits have to return their specimens to a government clinic for results. On Sunday, Italy was hit by heavy rain and snowfall that caused landslides, flooding and high risk of avalanches. For 48 hours, firefighters have been working in rescue operations in the center-north region of Veneto, Friuli Venezia Giulia, Emilia-Romagna, Piedmont, Lombardy and Tuscany. The road system was under severe pressure due to rain, snowfall and consecutive landslides. The region's president, Luca Saia, is calling on all citizens to avoid heading towards the area because of the landslides and avalanches risk. For safety reasons, the Brenner railway line between Bolzano and the Italian border is closed, and since yesterday evening, the Brenner motorway has also been closed. In the area of Modena in Emilia-Romagna, 60 families have been evacuated due to the overflowing of the Panaro River, which has caused by heavy rain. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us.